I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about true crime and psychology. Thank you so much for joining. Let's hop right into today's topic. Let's go.
Welcome, welcome. Today, I wanted to talk about two things. I think we'll have extra time at the end, so I will talk about Corey Richens a little bit towards the end. But first, I wanted to talk about the verdict in the Colin Gray trial. I have links to my 4 prior videos covering this case down in the description. Colin Gray is a case out of the state of Georgia where the father was charged after his son committed a school incident. So, certain words on YouTube, and the father was the one that purchased what the son used. The father was the one who had custody because a lot of people wanted the mother charged as well. But the mother, I personally think, researched before this incident. She researched Ethan Crumbly and his parents, the first parents in the United States that I'm aware that were held accountable for their minor child engaging in a mass incident. And I think Marcy was concerned that Colt, their son, was on a similar path. And Colin denies that Marcy ever shared any of that information with him. I did not find his testimony entirely credible, and I don't think the jury did either. His cross-examination was painful, and you all agreed. I'm glad it wasn't normally when it's painful for me, it's also painful for you all. The state walked through all of the inconsistencies and all of the times that the dad could have gotten his child help beginning in second grade. There was a substitute teacher that commented on one of my videos. She mentioned being a substitute teacher for Colt in elementary school. And this was prior to, I think, the mother starting using substances. So it seems like the initial years of Colt's life were pretty stable. And then at some point, big mom has issues with substances. The dad tried to minimize his issues with substances because dad ends up going to a methadone clinic, likely because of he's physically addicted to pain medication, and he tried to explain all of that away after talking so bad about Marcy and her decisions. Now the reason why she was not able to parent the children was because there were a lot of big allegations there. During her testimony, I think there was some evidence that wasn't able to come into the trial because Marcy, to me, seemed to allude to the fact that there might have been domestic harm between her and Colin, but they didn't go into it. Marcy's the one that showed up to Colin's house and keyed his car after tying up her mother, which is that's so this child had all the red flags and should have never had access to any weapons. And the jury took less than 2 hours to find Colin guilty of all the charges. Somebody in the comments over, I think it was Trial Live TV, or sometimes I get notifications for Vinnie Powell's Facebook group. I'm not in the group, but it sometimes shows up in my feed on Facebook. Somebody said that the verdict took longer to read than the actual deliberations, and I love true crime humor. I don't think this sends a message that every parent is going to be responsible for what their child does. So I covered another case of Austin Thompson. Austin Thompson was a case where he was doing well in school. He was doing well with his friends. There did not seem to be any red flags until the day his first victim was his brother. And then there were some random people, and it seems like he had been planning, unbeknownst to anyone else. So he didn't have a shrine to, I don't know, some mass incident person. it seemed pretty clear that Colt had serious issues and serious problems. I personally do not think that Austin Thompson's parents will be charged, because it wasn't a situation of him having severe, because I don't think there was severe depression or anxiety. Like, some things, some decisions are just evil, impulsive. I don't know. Like, some decisions are just bad. Colt seemed to be escalating. The dad tried to minimize because Colt messaged him that the voices were telling him to do things. Let me see if I can find the exact language of that one. I might have deleted it. I might have deleted it, because I was watching over on Trial Live TV, and I thought they were replaying the closing statements, but they were replaying the opening statements. And so I deleted the exact language from that. I will be watching for Colt's trial. They first have to find him competent to stand trial. And so he's likely doing mental health evaluations and all of those things. He might attempt an NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity plea. I don't know if he'll get there. There seem to be multiple ways that he was hiding his behavior. He was concealing it. He asked his grandmother, if I do something really bad, will you still love me? Because in order to be found not guilty by reason of insanity, that's a really, really high threshold. And an important aspect of that threshold is an inability to appreciate the wrongfulness of the act. And if I was the psychologist assessing Colt, I would personally, and I'm not the person assessing him, I can't make this definitive statement. I'm saying, in general, for me, looking at the situation, it seems like he knew his behavior was wrong. He didn't tell the teacher, I'm going to go, like he asked the teacher to go to the counselor. And there just seemed to be some plotting and planning in this. Now, I do think he was experiencing significant mental health issues, but just because somebody has a mental health problem does not necessarily mean that they'll be found not guilty by reason of insanity. That's a very high threshold to meet. He might have a better chance with a jury, because there might be somebody on the jury. I don't know. So that's where we'll see where that trial goes. My second case that I wanted to talk about today is Ruth Miller. I have a link to my first video down on that case. And she is it's a really, really sad one. Trigger warning or content warning for child harm. And a lot of people have thoughts about the dad in this situation. Okay. So my personal thoughts, I don't know this to be true, but the way that Ruth describes it is that her and her husband were doing this test of God, and they could have had what we called a shared psychosis. What a shared psychosis is, and Ruth might have been the person who was really manic and who was really psychotic and was having religious delusions. And he might have believed her, because it's my understanding that the husband swam out into the lake and drowned. And Ruth believed that her husband had been swallowed by a fish. And after that happened, it's my understanding that she went and she got their 4-year-old, and she took the 4-year-old back to that part of the lake, and she gave the child to God. And that's not so, like, that was a crime. That's what she has pled in GRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. She then goes and she has 18-year-old twins, and I believe, and then there's a child that's under the age of 18. I think maybe 15. Y'all know me in details. There was another child, and they all get in a golf cart, and Ruth tries to drive it. She actually does drive the golf cart into the lake. And the bystanders see this, and it's very odd. Like, a woman is driving a golf cart into the lake, and then her and the kids are walking from out of the lake, and somebody calls 911. I covered that body cam footage, and if you go back and watch my original video, I said, this is one of the few cases that I think she will likely be found not guilty by reason of insanity, because she immediately tells the cops that, like, because they ask her, "Where is your son?" And she's like, "He's with God." "Where is your husband?" "He's in the big fish." Like, she seems so disconnected from reality, and not in a fake way, because a lot of people had concerns of folie à deux, like, was she faking this? And I've worked with people that were psychotic. I've seen active psychosis. She seemed actively psychotic and fully believing every word that she was saying. Where is the line between a religious belief and a religious delusion? So her belief of walking on water and testing God by throwing a child into a lake, that went against her religious beliefs. So she was not in like a harmful cult that believed in sacrificing children, or like, so what she was believing, because it's my understanding that her family was trying to get her help. You have the additional thing that, so I think she was a part of a small religious community. I've heard some people say Amish. I've heard some people say maybe, I don't know if it was like, I don't know, that she might have been some other like smaller religion. I don't know. But everybody talked with her faith community, and her behavior was concerning. And they would have allowed her to get help. This wasn't a situation where help was being withheld from her. They would have encouraged her to get help. And she's currently I believe she's being held in jail. When she appeared in court, she appears medicated. So I am not going to play the hearing. The hearing was very short. Let me share my screen. I have it ready, but I have not shared it yet. Here we go. That's not the tab. Here we go. So this is the judge in the case. All righty. And so they had the hearing, and in all of the hearings where she's had to appear. So this incident happened in August of 2025. Ruth Miller had 3 forensic evaluations, 1 defense expert and 2 state experts. And all 3 experts agreed that she met criteria for not guilty by reason of insanity. And I think the state and the defense got together. So if this case had went to trial, her surviving children would have had to testify, to say what they saw, what their mom, like they would have had to testify. This bench trial did not have opening statements. It did not have closing statements. The judge went back to his chambers and he reviewed all of the information. And so she will be in jail until March 13th of 2026. So in just a few weeks, they are going to have sentencing where they are going to determine placement. So she had a bench trial, which just meant that, so the state and defense stipulated to the authenticity of the reports. They both agreed that neither one of them were going to call any witnesses. This situation, because when the cops get there, they are confused because they're asking, "Ma'am, where is your child?" Like everybody's like, because so all the warnings, this child and her husband had to be recovered. I personally don't think that she did anything to, because I think if she had done something to her husband, I think she would have said, "I pushed him to God," or I don't know, like I think, but what she said about him was he jumped in the lake and he swam. Like I don't think she was in a mental state to be able to lie. So when she says that her husband jumped in the lake and they were testing God, I think that's what they were doing. It was a very odd situation. But after I don't think she knew that her husband had drowned, because in that moment, she believes that this is a Jonah situation. Sometimes I accidentally say Noah. That's like a whole other. Noah is the sometimes, but it's Jonah. Sometimes Jonah went to Nineveh to. I'm sorry. Um, so Jonah was the one that was swallowed by the big fish, and that's a Bible story. And so she's describing something like this, but she seems so disconnected from anything touching reality to a point where one of the officers talks about having some knee pain and she asks if she can pray for them, but then the prayer has nothing to do with that person's pain. The prayer is all about like God performing this miracle so that they all believe in this fish. Like it was very, very disconnected. It was super disconnected. So there is a chance that a jury could have still found her guilty. So I personally think the defense and state did, by agreeing to stipulating to, so the state doesn't have anybody on their side saying she's guilty. Like the state's expert agrees that she's not guilty by reason of insanity. They have nobody that's saying that she's faking, that she doesn't have a mental health condition, or that she understood that her actions were wrong. 3 mental health experts, 2 of them are independent, all agree that yes, she should be found not guilty by reason of insanity. So it goes before the judge. They stipulate to all the facts. The judge, so they never disclose her diagnosis, and we may never know it. I think because of this case's publicity, and I do think body cam footage. So because the body cam footage was released, and this was a super odd case, and because all of that went viral, I think the defense is trying to protect her moving forward, and her diagnosis was not disclosed. I will tell you, I heard words like grandiose. I heard words distractible, racing thoughts, delusional. She never, so before this incident, she never thought she had the ability to walk on water. She thought God told her to walk on water, and that they have medical records supporting this, and that there's eyewitness testimony. So the officers, everybody around would say that this behavior was odd and was definitely that she was having a mental health crisis. So the judge did find her not guilty by reason of insanity. I think sometimes juries are reluctant to do NGRI because they think the person will be free. So like, let's say that like the person's going to get a year of treatment and then they're going to be released. I don't have, let me look at the average treatment for an NGRI trace. Average psychiatric. I don't even know if they have this data. Commitment for NGRI case. So the average length. So average is just, so there are some people that might be a few years less, some people that might be the rest of their life. So the average is 6 to 7 years. And if a person ever is released, they're released with conditions. I covered the case of the Slender Man, you all. That was the individual that Morgan Geyser. I covered that case, and she escaped from her group home, and she is now, I think, in jail. I don't think she went back to a mental institution because she was initially found not guilty by reason of insanity. The treatment center said, we did all we can do. Like, she's stable enough to leave. And so she stepped down to a group home. She ran away from the group home and was, I think, like, I don't know, she was in a different state. She was found in a completely different state. And I do believe she's going to serve out the rest of her sentence in a regular, she's in jail now. If she needs any medication, she'll be able to receive medication. But jail is very different from a treatment facility. So in a treatment facility, you might get therapy once a day. So they normally have therapeutic groups. You're normally meeting with your therapist at least once a week, sometimes 2 to 3 times a week, sometimes every day. It really just depends. But there are therapeutic activities happening all the time. They are under the care of a psychiatrist. You're talking about your crime. You're talking about, coping, because she killed her 4-year-old. Like, that is the truth that she will have to grieve and live with for the rest of her life. And there are some people that believe that once they're found in GRI, they do not fight being released. So the case that I'm thinking of, I think it's the Andrea Yates case. She was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Once again, another content warning. She had 5 children, and I believe it was in the bathtub, but she harmed her, I have to say harmed, her children. And she has had an opportunity to be considered for release. And she said, I'm exactly where I need to be. And she does not want to be released, and she wants to stay in the state hospital. And that's where she has stayed. Thank you for adding this. The EMT mentioned the knee pain because the mother wanted to kneel and pray, not that she was going to pray about the woman's pain. Yeah. So, but that whole incident was just strange. The whole thing was just very strange. It was very sad. And the fact that all of the experts agreed is rare. The fact that the defense expert agreed, but all 3. So they had an independent state evaluation, and the prosecutor, hired someone. We had another similar case, Chloe Driver, where the mental health experts all agreed that they thought mental health contributed to her crime, but the jury found her guilty. But there were phone calls, there were other things, and the state told this narrative of her being jealous. The state wove this whole other story, and I think the jury, they found her guilty. So I do think if Ruth Miller had a regular trial, there is a chance that a jury could have found her guilty. And when the state and defense both agree, like that's a pretty, that doesn't happen all the time. I watched this with Melanie Little earlier today. I think they call themselves the Cupcakes. Something about cupcakes. I watched with them this morning. She gave me a shout out on her channel, and during her stream, that's where I saw a lot of these types of questions. But she looked up that less than like 0.08% of cases, they are actually found guilty by reason, not guilty by reason of insanity. So an NGRI case actually being successful is incredibly rare because the threshold is just oh so high. Let me know if y'all have any general questions. I'm really excited. Today I was a guest on Profiling Evil. So Mike, he invited me to be on his podcast. I'm pretty sure it was one of the psych nerds, or I don't know if I commented on one of his videos and somebody recommended that him and I connect, but we recorded a podcast. He was like, it was a really great experience. It'll be coming out in about a month. And so I will share the link once that link to the podcast is available. Dr. Berry, do you think a defendant who was actually in psychosis has a better chance of getting NGRI with a judge or with a jury? It kind of depends on the circumstances. With the jury, it just depends on the circumstances. It's really hard to reach that threshold. So of the not understanding that your actions were wrong. So the courtroom jumper, I normally have his name in my mind. Y'all know I'm bad with names, but that was a case out of Nevada. He initially attempted a not guilty by reason of insanity and later changed his plea, likely at the, suggestion of his lawyer, and he agreed to it. He changed his plea to guilty but mentally ill. Not every state has that option because sometimes they're able to do part of their sentence in a mental health facility and the other part of it in a state hospital. I like that some of those options are available. I personally think Taylor Schabusiness is just, I think, I don't think, I think she knew what she did was wrong. I think she has an evilness and just Taylor Schabusiness. Like she's a lot, and there are certain people that mental health hospitals would decline because she's incredibly aggressive and she does it with no reason. Like she's just, I think it's a lot of the drugs, what it's done to her brain. And yes, I'm glad that she was just found regular guilty. Yes. Um, yes. And then me and Natalie, we are trying. So Natalie is busy with work. Okay. So Natalie's over there paying those bills because we were going to go live today, but I think we should be going live sometime this weekend. So look out for that. We are going to collaborate on Robbie Crozier. And so we're going to take a look at his testimony. And I also recommended that we take a look at the video. So that's with the Corey Richens trial. Robert Crozier, or Robbie, he was the individual that Carmen, the housekeeper, alleges that Corey asked her for a stronger schmug. And Carmen reaches out to Nicole. Nicole recommends Robbie. Carmen reaches out to Robbie. We had the cell phone data of 3 times Carmen and Robbie's phones meeting up at the Maverick. And so we have the cell phone data. And Robbie on the stand said, I would never meet up with Carmen for anything other than a deal. And so so we are going to talk about his credibility, his testimony. I would love, as a defense attorney, what she thought of his of the video of his interview coming in, because he made it sound like he was so incapacitated and like he was so out of his mind that he didn't know what he was saying. And I personally did not feel that. And so we will talk about that a little bit more. Another question. Do you mean Colt Gray? Oh, Colt Gray. So please make sure. So, because there was a Colton Gray, but that wasn't him. He has now graduated, and because he was in that class. So it's Colt Gray. Do I think that Colt Gray's mother, Marcy, should be in legal trouble for giving him her Zoloft? So she did not have parental, she had already lost the rights of the children. The state had already determined that she needed supervised visitation at dad's discretion. She had already lost her parental rights. And so she, it would be hard to charge her because she might say that Colin allowed her to, and Colin was the one with custody. She didn't have custody. Now it's illegal for me to give something. So if I had a client in session and they needed a Tylenol, I wouldn't give them, anything. But I personally, I don't know this is true. I personally think now that Colin, the dad, has been convicted, I personally think the state is going to move towards terminating the parental rights. Because if you heard when Marcy, the mom, when she was on the stand, she talked about still having DFACs or in my area, it's called Social Services Department, DSS, that's what it's called. But in Georgia, it's called DFACS. She still has DFACS involvement. The children, I believe, are in foster care. I think the state is likely going to look at terminating mom and dad's parental rights, and the children might be able to be adopted. So once kids are like 16, sometimes they might be giving the choice of remaining in foster care and aging out. Kids in foster care can stay, like if they're in foster care when they turn 18, they can continue to receive state support, I think until 21 years old or so. I've worked with individuals that did independent living programs through social services, and sometimes just and so I hope that the daughter, that she's able to change her last name. I do believe that she would like to change her last name, and she does not want to be known as, Colt's sister. And so I truly wish her all the best moving forward. Do you think the Zoloft could have contributed to his behavior? Yes. So Zoloft has a black box warning. I think they're trying to remove it. So SSRIs have a warning. I am not a medical doctor. I'm a psychologist. We study psychopharmacology. And so I'm talking about this from my understanding as a psychologist. I have lots of clients that are under the age of 18 that are prescribed SSRIs and do just fine. Anytime a client is prescribed a new medication, we just watch for any potential side effects. And a potential side effect for SSRIs, like Zoloft, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, is that it can increase thoughts of harming self. It can induce mania, potentially. Like sometimes people have negative effects after starting medication. So that's why it should always be done under the care of a doctor. Somebody should not consult Google. They should not talk with their psychiatrist about a child that's not, receiving therapy. I thought Marcy thought Colt is just like me. I think Colin thought Colt is just like me. And neither one of them saw like their son was on a really dangerous path. If he had come to see me, I likely would have diagnosed, I would have assessed for all the things, trauma, ADHD, all of those things. He likely met criteria for conduct disorder, and he was on a path to antisocial personality disorder. So antisocial does not mean I don't like to be around people. Antisocial meaning against social norms. So we all agree to not pew each other. Like that's just like that's a social norm. If somebody's driving slow in front of me, I don't drive them off the road. That's illegal. We all agree to be like law-abiding citizens, all of that good stuff. Some people don't have any trouble breaking rules, breaking laws, taking advantage of people. And that can be on the path or on the track. So antisocial behavior can be on a spectrum. And criminal behavior is at one of those ends of what's it called? One of those is on the end of antisocial personality disorder. So in the past, I think in the DSM-3, it said, or maybe even DSM-4, it was like oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, antisocial personality disorder. But a lot of kids that were diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder didn't necessarily end up with conduct disorder. And some of the kids that ended up with conduct disorder didn't necessarily always end up, but everybody with antisocial personality disorder, they normally met criteria for conduct and oppositional defiant disorder. And so that's just a little bit of psychology nerding out that we love to do here. I also agree that I think dad was afraid of taking the weapon from him, which is scary. Like if your child has something and I think that's why Colin was searching a safe, because I think he knew if he ever did take it, he was going to have to lock it away. And because Colin tried to minimize, like he did, I don't think he gave an answer for why he was looking for safes. I don't think he gave it. Oh my gosh, his cross-examination, I literally, in my notes, I wrote blah, blah, blah. Like he talked, but he really wasn't saying much. He wasn't taking responsibility for anything. Everything was, so for the officers coming to his house and telling him that they believed there was a potential that his child was using Discord and talking about wanting to do a mass crime in 2 years. And he's like, and he believed his child and he believed the officers when they were like, oh, it might not be him. But the officers still said, lock up the weapons. They were just, this case had a million and one red flags. The state did an interview. If you haven't seen it yet, I will put the link in the chat. Because they talked about what some of the jurors. So it's my understanding the jurors appreciated the way that the state laid everything out. Not YouTube Studio. I want my history. There we go. History. There we go. There we go. Share, copy. All right. So we have time. Let's watch this real quick. And if it gets cut out later, please just know that's because I got somebody got mad at me. Not mad. So sometimes you can get stressed for showing news stuff. All right. So let's do this view. All right. Nope, wrong one. Thank y'all for letting me talk out loud. It's one of those days. My processing is happening out loud right now. It happens a lot, but all right. So this is the prosecutor being interviewed after the verdict.
With the jury's verdict, the victims are very happy with the jury's verdict, and I'll answer any questions anyone has, Courtney.
What does this mean for the state of Georgia, this guilty verdict, the first time a parent has been charged in connection to a school shooting?
Well, we hope that it moves the needle a little further. I think you saw in this case that the mother actually reviewed what happened in Michigan, which would have been the first one. And she then, as a result of that, asked her husband to remove the weapons. It could have ended this tragedy. So Michigan was able to move the needle to the point that it almost stopped this tragedy. We don't know how many tragedies it did stop. And we hope we've moved the needle a little further.
At what point in this investigation did you decide to charge the father?
It would have been in the first few days. Of course, we learned about the shrine in the house early on, which worried us. And then when we found out about the FBI 2 years before at the house, or a year and a half before, that started to connect the dots with us, that he had a long time of knowledge. So we were leaning towards charging and probably did charge at that point. The text messages came in later and just reinforced our decision.
You had an opportunity to talk to jurors afterwards.
Yes.
What did they share with you? This is an extremely quick verdict considering the length of this trial.
They were very happy with our presentation. They thought we did a good job. They had some questions about things they didn't see, evidence they weren't allowed to see. We talked to them a little bit about that. And they just kind of talked us through where the children were, where the victims were, how they were doing. And we reassured them on that front.
What was the biggest piece of evidence that you think led to this guilty verdict by the jurors?
I don't think it was one piece of evidence. I think it was the fact that it was multiple pieces of evidence over a lengthy period of time that really showed them what was happening inside that house and all the warnings that were missed. I think it's one of those things, the defense talked about a slippery slope, but it wasn't like one parent missed one warning. This was multiple warnings over a lengthy period of time. And like we said, you just had to do one thing and take that rifle away, and this would have been prevented. So I think it was all of those things together.
You did get him to concede on the stand that he was told by Colt that was Nicholas Cruz in those pictures. Do you think that was a big moment for jurors?
Absolutely. I mean, how do you allow those pictures on your child's wall and not question it further?
At what point for you should he have locked up the guns?
All the time?
That calls for a lot of speculation. I would have never given my 14-year-old child a firearm like that after Jackson County coming to my house. I think
So I work with a lot of people that hunt and that so I think no matter how old a child is, I think children can make impulsive decisions. So I don't think any child should have free access to a weapon. The weapon should never be stored in their room. Never ever. Um, Colt could have had the same plan and done it when did it with like a knife. It wouldn't have been as lethal, as quick. And he seemed like the gun felt powerful to him. And so I don't know that he would have done the same thing with like a different instrument. But giving him that access, thankfully that teacher, his first period teacher, kind of raised the red flag. Like there were a lot of things that fell in place where this could have been a much bigger tragedy. And it already was. So it already is like 4 people deceased, more than 20 people injured, everybody in the entire school, entire town, everybody impacted. Um, it could have had more fatalities. And so, yeah. No worries. Yeah, Peachy Keen, I get it. Please take care of your mental health as everybody watches.
Most parents wouldn't have done that. I don't know if that reaches criminal at that point, but it certainly reaches common sense.
What do you recommend for sentencing?
We haven't decided that yet. We're going to talk with the victims' families. I haven't actually spoken to them at all since the verdict came out. So we're going to go talk with them, get them ready. Sentencing will be at a future time when they can all be here and speak to the judge, and we'll discuss it with them and make a decision.
What have the victims' families told you prior to this? Like,
It's gonna be very painful.
Are there any comments that they've made that sort of stand out in your mind?
I don't think it was a common reaction. They all are reacting to their grief in different ways. They all have different perspectives, and we've listened to all of them and talked with all of them. And I don't think there's any common thing. I've just told them from the beginning that my plan was to prosecute this to the fullest extent of the law. And that's what we've done.
When you spoke to jurors, did they give any sense that they were trying to send a message?
I don't think I got that sense from them. I think they were looking at this case, these facts, and this law.
It was
and
bad.
coming to a decision.
Were you
Yes,
surprised
ma'am.
by how quickly?
Actually blamed others in this case, said D. Martin could have been to blame, said Lisa Butler. What do you say? Or the mother should have known something. How do you explain that to viewers who haven't been watching this 2-week trial?
One of the things that came to light during our investigation was that the reason so many lives were saved at Appalachia was because of lessons we learned from prior tragedies. So I am all for looking at these things. What could we have done better? What can we do in the future to make our children safer? But the blame game, these were good people trying to make their best decisions as they could with limited information. The one person that had all the information was the one that didn't act.
Did you ever actually consider charges for Marcy Gray?
Absolutely. We found what she did to be morally reprehensible. We do not believe she's a good mother, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, she did not have custody of Colt.
That's what I thought.
She did not have proximity to Colt. And she was not the one that provided him the firearms.
Can you provide any update on Colt's case and where that stands at this point?
I cannot. The state stands ready to try the case at any time.
What does this verdict mean for the community here in the county?
I hope it starts the healing process. It can't, of course, complete it until we finish the whole trial, both trials. But I hope that they can start moving forward with their healing.
Were you surprised at how quick the verdicts came?
If they didn't come back in 5 minutes, I start sweating. So to me, it seemed like an eternity.
What message do you hope this case sends to other parents here in Barrow County or around the country?
Well, at my college, there was a plaque on the wall that said, "Duty is the sublimest word in the English language." And we talk a lot about rights in our country. And we're proud of our rights, and I'm proud of our rights. But, our rights were given to us by our forefathers. But God gave us a duty to protect our children. And I hope that we remember that as parents, as community members, to protect our children, because that is our God-given duty.
Legal question. Colt has the presumption of innocence.
Yes, sir.
But how can he still have that when his father's been convicted now of crimes that he allegedly committed?
That's a question for the courts and his defense attorneys.
Can you give our audience a sense of how much work you and your team put into a case like this?
Hours, lives. We've had Ashley Gilliland, who testified in the trial, Amanda Dibble, Jenny, thank you, worked extremely hard on this case. It is all they've been doing for the last year, at least. The hours we put in has been tremendous, but we wanted to honor the families, the victims. We wanted to honor all the hard work that law enforcement did, and us not giving everything we had to this case would have been dishonor to them, and we weren't going to do that.
And clearly it had an emotional impact on your entire team as well as you. There were moments that we saw you, tearing up as we heard testimony from those survivors.
Well, we're all parents. We can never understand the full grief, but it touches us. And we've met these families, we've dealt with these families, we walked through with these families, and yeah, it's emotional.
There were points throughout leading up to the tragedy when law enforcement could have stepped in to interrupt the situation in some way, or have spoken up a little bit louder than they did. Do you think there are some lessons that can be learned from that for law enforcement in the county as far as how to prevent these kind of situations from happening again?
Yeah, we've been discussing that as a law enforcement community. In fact, y'all probably know that after this event happened, we got a flood of threats coming in from kids all over the world, because kids are kids, I guess. So we've had to discuss, how are we going to deal with these? How are we going to work through all of these threats where children are doing this what we would consider outrageous actions of calling in threats when they don't mean anything. So yeah, there's been a lot of discussions with law enforcement about how to deal with these sorts of things going forward.
What would you say to those that are disturbed by this verdict across the nation, who think this is a parent that is being held responsible for something that his child did? What would you tell those?
I would say, please watch my opening. This was a trial about this defendant's actions, his choices, and his responsibility. All right. Thank y'all so much.
All right. So Colin's responsibility. So Marissa asked Dr. Berry, was it money or was it lack of insurance? Why didn't Colin do more? So Colin took 4 months to register the 2 youngest for school. 4 months to register the youngest children for school. One day, instead of Colt going to school, I think at least him and the daughter, they go to the shooting range instead of going to school. But Colt did not attend the 8th grade at all. And Dad wants to blame everybody else for it, but he was aware. Dad did not register Colt for 9th grade. Marcy and everybody else helped. He needed his sister's help. He seemed really bad with following through on things, and not in in a neglectful way. He kept saying he would get him help. So there were multiple times he told social services, because social services recommended that he get his child help. And then they documented in their record that Dad was going to follow up and Dad was going to get him help. And on the stand, Dad was like, I was still researching options. I think Dad agreed to the counseling at school because it meant he didn't have to take him somewhere. I believe the daughter, when she was on the stand and she was like, family, home really didn't feel like a family. I think Dad was in his room most of the time. I think Colt was in his room. Everybody just kind of did their own thing. I do think that Colt was failed. I think people tried, but I think he needed serious help. The grandmother found the place so the day after, Colt texts Dad about hearing voices, about I can't control the voices in my head. Dad takes him to, I think, the shoot. I think Colt asked Dad for bullets or something, and Dad says that he'll think about doing it. It wasn't helpful. I don't think Dad took responsibility for his part. Now Marcy is her whole other story. And based on what the state said, that confirms my belief. I do believe, and the state, because that's juvenile and domestic court. So this was criminal court. Sometimes there's a different state's attorney. I don't know if it'll be the same one, but there will likely be an attorney that represents the state for the family court case. They're likely gonna terminate both Colin and mom's parental rights. I do believe that will happen, and then that will give the two youngest children an opportunity to be adopted potentially. And so, it's a lot. Somebody said, I know other states, hey Lisa, where the parents would get into legal trouble for not making their children attend school. Yes. So no. So that's everybody. So what happened was they said they were going to register him for online school. So what happens, a lot of schools, if a child isn't registered, so by not registering him for any school, he had zero absences for because nobody was tracking whether he was attending school or not. I do hope that more states monitor homeschool, because a lot of people do homeschool, and then that can place children at risk for harm at home. And yes, Georgia does have truancy laws. And in Virginia, so it's not illegal to not go to school, and hopefully no Virginia kids are watching, but the school can take the child and family to court, and then the child can be court ordered to attend school. And once that happens, the child can be placed in juvenile detention. The child can be placed in foster care. The child can be required to go to some type of treatment facility. In my state, I think if the school had been aware at the level of mental health issues Colt was having, and that dad wasn't getting him help, it could have been medical neglect. Like somebody could have called social services to come and check on things. I do wish that the foster care prevention workers, they took dad's word. So dad lied when the social service workers came to the house and they were like, how's everything? Dad was like, they're great. Because I don't think he wanted social services involvement. I think he wanted everybody to just leave them alone. But Colt wasn't going to school regularly. He had a lot of absences in 7th grade. He got into physical fights. He did property destruction. Colt had serious problems. So I think Colin is very bright. I think he does he was making $7,000 a month. He seems very intelligent to me. I don't think he was limited. I think he did not. So he kept talking about being a single parent. So he didn't do the things. So my husband has never scheduled a doctor's appointment or dental appointment for our child. If our child needs something done, I'm normally, but like I do the research. So our child saw an orthodontist recently. He's going to need braces at some point, but I'm the one that does those things. If I wasn't available, my husband could, like he would do those things. With Marcy not being in the picture, because there might have been a time in their lives when Marcy, before she ended up on substances, where they did go to the doctor regularly, where they were kind of doing okay. And then something happened and things started to fall apart. And then Marcy was no longer in the home. Colin and Marcy, they seem to be on again, off again. That relationship seemed to be toxic. I don't think he was in as much denial as he portrayed on the stand. Those are my own personal thoughts. I don't know that for sure. I think dad wanted the jury to feel sorry for him. I think he wanted the jury to think he was a good dad. He just missed it. This was like missing the sun. Like this was it was so obvious that this kid needed serious help. And so dad took responsibility. And then dad would say that he believed Colin before he believed Marcy. Like the animosity between Colin and Marcy, I think Colt used that to his advantage and likely was manipulating both the way that kids try to do. And then that's where I think, so kids need boundaries, like things have to happen. And so, the jury convicted him of all of those. So they had to go through all those charges. And so I think the jury talked. It was an hour and 40 minutes. The form probably took 10 to 15 minutes to fill out, but they found him guilty on all charges. The state on cross-examination. So I think Colin testified for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I don't know. In his version, I was like, like he kind of like, I was listening like, okay, but then the state got up and they started playing his words. The state was just evidence after evidence. Like the state did this phenomenal presentation that made it so clear that there were so many red flags. And the only thing the defense could do is get back up and be like, was there any reason your child shouldn't have had access to a weapon? And Colin's like, no. And we're all like, yeah, there were. So I got so mad at that point that I wrote a list of 10 reasons why, like in that moment, just 10 reasons off the top of my head why Colin should have never had access to a weapon. Colin described Colt. So sorry if I said I meant Colt should have access to a weapon. Colin, the dad, described Colt as angry, I think vindictive. And so it was a whole thing. The state was so thorough. Given Colt's likely conduct, potential psychopath tendencies, what interventions would you have recommended? So the best intervention for conduct disorder is what we call multisystemic family therapy. He likely, if things didn't change, he likely needed to be removed from his dad's care, potentially. So I don't know that dad was ever going to lock up the weapons. I don't think he was ever going to. I don't think he thought his son, I don't know, that's where I'm on the fence of like, what did dad, if the state knew that Colt wasn't going to school, that like, if the state knew of all the problems and that Colt missed an entire year of school, dad probably would have lost custody of the children. He probably would have. And so I think that's why dad lied to the state. Those are my own personal thoughts. I don't know that for sure. But that's just what I think personally. So so I just would put that whole family in therapy. Dad, because dad isn't, I don't think he's great with emotions. I think he's real mad at Marcy. Like his anger towards Marcy, it's problematic. And I think, so dad tried to deny that him and Colt got into physical arguments. I don't believe him. I think him and Colt would get into, would like physically fight each other. I think they would. Did Marcy experience a trauma? So I don't know how. So I think, because let's say she ended up using some of Colin's pills. So opioids can sometimes lead to heroin use. And so, because dad tries to, because I guess mom might have dabbled in like methamphetamines and things like that. I don't know if Colt was ever diagnosed with ADHD and was prescribed like Adderall or Ritalin or something. And if somebody ever used his, I don't know. So I don't know enough. And some things about Colt stayed out of the trial to not prejudice everybody against dad. So I think we might find out more during Colt's trial if some of that information comes up. But yeah. So I think because he downplayed Colt chasing his sister and ending up with his head and going through the wall. And dad was like, oh no, I was just concerned that he could have hurt. No, like I think he was that angry. And then I guess Colt put a hole in his sister's door because he was trying to get to her. Dad minimized everything. It was so painful. It was, I agree with you. It was wild. It was too much. I need to go feed my kid. I appreciate you all. Ooh, I got a new shirt. I wanted to share with you all. It says, the only drama I want is Korean with English subtitles. I absolutely love this. I'm going to watch it. I don't know. I'm probably going to wear that sometime next week. Yeah. So, I appreciate you all. And that was just an online purchase. I get nothing for sharing that. It was just a little bit of happiness for me. I opened that right before I came up here. And so I was super happy about that. I wanted to share that with you all. Kids need boundaries. Kids need support. And so I think Dad thought love was enough, that he could love them through it, that it would just be okay. But things were not okay. And I'm not surprised that the state charged him. I'm not surprised that a jury convicted him. I don't think every situation is like this, but this case had so many huge red flags. It was very clear. And Marcy also made some outward, I don't know if it'll ever, but she seemed to allege that there might have been some issues in her marriage. And so, yeah. Yeah. So I watch K-dramas. so K-dramas those are TV shows. So that's technically Squid Games is a K-drama. I watch the romantic ones. I just finished one. It was on Netflix. I finished one on Viki too. I watch a lot of Korean dramas. I'm learning a little bit of Korean as I watch them. Not a lot, but yes. I'm going to feed my kid. I appreciate you all. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Be kind, don't do crimes, and I will see you next time.